Americans crossed the land bridge from Asia and are believed to have stayed in what is now Alaska. After thousands of years, they moved into the land that was to become the United States. For reasons not yet understood, they disappeared and over time were replaced by Native Americans known as the Hopi. There were about 2 million native people by the time the Europeans arrived. The first Europeans were from Greenland around the year 985. Around 650 years, the first explorers came later to claim the New World, such as Dutch, French, British, and Spanish settlers. Most settlers came from the British colonies in the 1600s, and they were English, and others were from Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, France, and Scotland. Some had left their homelands to escape war, political oppression, work, or religious freedom.
Ellis Island was the gateway land for millions of immigrants in the upper New York Bay in 1892 through 1915. Between 1815 and 1915, 90% of the U.S. immigration consisted of 30 million Europeans, the majority of whom were from Ireland, Germany. By 1855, more than 50% of the New York population were foreign-born. Today, 40% of Americans can trace their ancestry to those who passed Ellis Island. Toward the end of the 19th century, 1.6% of immigrants were from Asia. This was enough to pass the Chinese Exclusion Act that restricted the Chinese immigration for 10 years. It is after several legislations targeting race and ethnicity that affected public opinion, and American citizens began to turn against the idea of certain type of immigrants. The first pieces of legislation include the Johnson-Reed Act of 1924, which began to limit the number of type of immigrants coming into the country. It was the first to place a restriction based on race and ethnicity. He said the main problem with America is illegal immigration, those who are here undocumented. So in the 1980s, the way that it was dealt with was by tightening the border and granting amnesty to those who were here 15 years prior. Then why is this still an issue? Those believe that granting an amnesty promoted more illegal immigration, and the number of foreigners continued to increase. Many Americans feel like the current 13 million undocumented people should be deported, while others feel like there should be a reform due to the countless benefits that they'll bring in regards to economy, innovation, and culture.
In the last census, more than half the foreign-born population in the United States is from Latin America. And overall, almost 13% of the American population are new immigrants. By and large, our fellow Americans came through legal channels. Only 29% were undocumented migrants. Of those undocumented people, 86% have been living in the U.S. for 7 years or longer, many within what we might think of as traditional American families. 16.6 million Americans live in families with at least one undocumented immigrant. $1.5 trillion is the amount that could be added to our GDP over 10 years if the estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants already here are granted legal status.
Former presidential candidate Patrick Buchanan is amongst the conservative commentators of this issue, while George Ramos, anchor of Univision, author and columnist, defend the benefits of immigration.
We're talking about 10 million illegal aliens who broke in line, broke the law, broke into our country, and are remaining here against the laws of the United States of America. Because they are very poor, they drive down wages. Their crime rate is twice as high as the native population. A third of them come in here without being educated in high school. They consume more taxes than they pay.
What you're saying, Mr. Buchanan, it's not true. You perfectly know that immigrants contribute much more to the economy of this country than what they take. The Academy of Sciences says very clearly that immigrants, both legal and undocumented, contribute $10 billion a year to the economy of this country. But on the other hand, it is a double standard, and to say the least hypocritical, to say that we should deport all these 8 million undocumented immigrants and at the same time benefit from their work. The salads and the food that you eat every day were harvested by immigrants. The house where you live most probably was built by immigrants. The restaurants and hotels where you go most probably are serviced by immigrants. And because of these immigrants, you don't have to pay $5 for a tomato, or $20 for a hamburger, or $50 for a steak.
Well,
so the fact is that the United States needs immigrants so we could maintain the high standards of living and to keep on providing social services.
Involves deportation as a consequence for those who have entered and live in the country undocumented.
That's all we ask, is that people who broke in our country, broke the law, and are here illegally, go back where they came from.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director John Morton explains the process of deportation and why it is not wise to deport all 13 million of undocumented people, with commentary of Jim Edgar, Republican Governor of Illinois.
What we're talking about is it's not a question of apprehension, but really of detention and ultimate removal. We have to get a removal order before we can remove somebody from the United States. And by and large, in most instances, that is accomplished through detaining them. We have a limited number of detention beds, and so the question is, do we focus our resources on somebody who just came across the border 2 years ago, as opposed to somebody who came across 10 years, now has, 2 United States citizen children and 3 cars in the driveway. And in those circumstances, we say we're going to focus on the person who violated the law most recently. We're going to focus our resources on those people who've committed a crime. If I have to pick between putting a criminal in detention space or somebody who's been here a very long time, I'm going to pick the criminal every time, because I think there's a much greater effect on public safety and immigration enforcement when I do that.
It is impractical to think that we can deport 12 million people. We have to face reality. We have to deal with those 12 million people. To deport would cost billions and billions of dollars in taxes that we don't have. And it would cost trillions of dollars to our economy that we cannot afford. Now, most of you know the statistics. The immigrant community is a great purchasing power of our economy. The Hispanic community alone, I think in 2009, had a purchase amount of over $40 billion. The Asian community, over $22 billion. Now, we're in the midst of a recession. This is a time we need to move our economy. And I can't think of any better way to move this economy than to finally deal with comprehensive immigration reform.
It is important for the Obama administration and Congress to come together on this issue rather than shy away from it. The main concern of the American citizens is that immigrants are simply taking up resources that taxpayers have invested in and not contributing back to the economy. It is forgotten that everyone that lives here has the same needs of food, shelter, and clothing, which the way to fulfill these needs is to purchase them, which all have taxes on them. So just simply by living here, they contribute to the flow of money. But being that it's still an issue, it becomes apparent that it isn't enough. To the defense of foreigners, they are not trying to get away from the responsibility of paying taxes. It is their hidden status that impairs them to contribute. They don't lack desire, just opportunity, and the only way to solve this is to take a look at the issues and provide a reform to where all these people can pay for the services and products provided by this country through taxation. It is a nation built and maintained by a diverse group of people. We are those people. We should not reject our ancestry.
We are America.